Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
For 30 minutes in the last hour, we had Dustin A. Zacks on from ICE Legal, who's in the Wall Street Journal beating the banks. And they've got, 4 other law firms here that discovered the robo-signing and have been deposing these people. And as he said, the fraud goes a lot deeper than just what they've discovered. He says exactly what pro se litigant Randy Kelton's been saying for several years now with his information, that they go in, they lie, and they say, we've got clear title to this, and they don't. But this affects people who bought houses, even if 2-3 sales before it was ever in foreclosure. So this affects basically everybody. And they now want to bail this out. They're talking about $5 trillion, $10 trillion or more, and they're going to try to do that in the lame duck Congress coming up, or after that next year. They have suspended the big 5 banks, including Bank of America, 2 weeks ago, all foreclosures, just because lawyers and pro se litigants have just begun to fight. Now, Randy, we're going to have you here for the rest of this hour and into the 4th hour in overdrive on our AM and FM affiliates and PrisonPlanet.tv and the streams at Infowars.com. I can't do this all the time, but the next few minutes we are posting at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com a free video box so people can see this. Just like when I had Governor Ventura on yesterday, we were playing video clips. It's so important for radio listeners to also be able to see this as we go through all these big color graphs with documentation that you put together that we're going to be showing on the document cam today. Actually, I may move it out here so my shadow's not on it. Maybe tilt the camera that way so we can not have my shadow on it. But we're going to be showing that to the viewers. But what did you think of ICE Legal, who's been deposing the banks, beating their socks off, saying clearly the same things that you've basically been talking about?
I think it took an incredible amount of courage for a law firm to take on these big banks and ask judges to render rulings that were new to the judges. Judges hate to do that. No judge wants to be the one to change the law because he doesn't want to be the one to have his case thrown out.
But the banks weren't following the law.
So, but to get a judge to make a ruling that's different from what he's been doing is really tough, and it took a lot of courage for these attorneys to do that, because an attorney can get in a lot of trouble asking a judge to render a ruling he doesn't want to rule on. So I have to give them credit. But the political climate is changing dramatically. It's what we expected back in March when the legislature allotted $200 million to the feds to start going after these guys. Just before the election, they dropped the sky on them, and that's exactly what they've done.
Well, the law firms in this Wall Street Journal article, they were actually having victories 5 years ago, and they first discovered robo-signing 4 years ago, but it didn't get any news attention.
Right.
But now people are taking what these law firms have done successfully and duplicating it, and as Mr. Zacks said, they are finding even more types of fraud, just like you said.
Right. We have a recent case in California, one in Nevada, Arizona, and Tennessee. It started in Tennessee.
There was a new one this week.
This one was a Quitam action. Quitam is a suit to recover funds that were defrauded from the government. You file a Quitam, if you win, you get to keep 25% of what you recover, unless the government steps in and takes over, in which case you only get to keep 10%. What the guy claimed is all of these sales of the security instrument had not been filed with the clerk of the court. He sued in Tennessee and named every court clerk in the state of Tennessee as a plaintiff, claimed $34 million in fees not rendered to those clerks. Guy in Arizona, Nevada, and now in California picked it up. The guy in California also claimed the $5,000 to $10,000 fines for not filing. So this is really bringing them serious problems.
Now, did they have standing? I mean, were they the ones being foreclosed on?
No. Under a Quitam action, it's the Whistleblower Act.
It's like a bounty against corruption.
Exactly. If you can find any government agency or official that's misappropriating public funds, you can sue under a qui tam action to recover those funds.
And they use a kind of twisted qui tam, then, correct me if I'm wrong, when they give, the police a percentage of drug money seized, or citizens get part of stuff from a criminal action, but that's against citizens.
That's absolutely twisted. That has been a good portion of what's turned this country into a police state. But that's for a different show. We are definitely in a police state, and it's getting worse, but we have opportunity here.
Well, I want to get back into all this, but you were involved in a case here in Austin, and we sent some cameras down this weekend dealing with a high-powered Republican, Tom DeLay. And I want to hear about that due process issue, because that's how you first got into studying the law. Then we'll get into the mortgages, Randy.
Okay, I'll go through this quickly.
Well, no, we're going to break. Long segment coming up, so we'll get into Tom DeLay and what's happening there. And not that Tom DeLay's a good guy, but he's having his due process rights violated. And if they can violate his, they can violate ours. We'll talk about Randy involved with that case straight ahead. Then we'll get into the mortgages. Stay with us. We're going to talk about the Tom DeLay situation of due process, then spend the balance of the next hour and a half going live into the fourth hour with Randy Kelton, because this mortgage fraud affects everybody. We're going to run the gamut of it. Next hour, we're going to have to go ahead and clear the phone lines now. It's going to be wide open phones specifically for mortgage fraud questions to get Randy's take on it. He's got over 200 cases and is having a 95+% success rate so far. We'll talk about that. And they're teaching folks how to pro se yourselves go out. Doesn't mean it's 100% or a silver bullet, but at least you got a fighting chance, because the courts are corrupt. But we're gaining ground, okay? And resistance is victory. Or you could just roll over to them. Going back to Randy Kelton, I didn't mean to digress, but it's important. You called the office a few days ago and said this is pretty important. And I've heard you talk about the whole situation with Tom DeLay, and I'm certainly no fan of some of the neo-connery he was involved in. But it shows the power of state prosecutors, grand juries, that they were really going after corruption. But they didn't do that, and you've studied the case. They didn't follow due process. You've looked at the charges. But he was removed from his leadership position, and you were down there at the courthouse covering this just 2 days ago in Austin. So briefly, tell folks about that. Okay,
Tom DeLay was taken out of office by Ron Earl, District Attorney of Travis County, Texas. A local district attorney took out the Speaker of the House. And the way he did it is he went to a grand jury with an indictment and asked the grand jury to approve the indictment. That is absolutely forbidden. Kennedy v. State says, in order to avoid the obvious evils of the accumulation of power in any one office, for the purpose of filing a criminal complaint, a prosecutor is not a credible person. We fought a revolution to keep the government from being the accuser and the prosecutor.
Yeah, you got three different branches of government, and you can't have prosecutors, as happened in the lead up to the war in 1776, becoming demigods, prosecuting their political enemies, you name it.
And that is exactly what happened here. Ron Earl's problem is he tried too hard, and he created the avenue for his own downfall, or the downfall of what he created. He went to the grand jury and asked them to approve an indictment. 27004 Government Code says that, 27004, the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, duties of the grand jurors. The grand jury shall examine into all criminal accusations that come to their knowledge by way of the prosecuting attorney or any credible person. Problem: a criminal accusation is a criminal complaint.
So he made the original complaint. Complaints are made by someone else, then the prosecutor looks at it. The prosecutor can't be the complainant and the deliverer.
Exactly. He's forbidden. The only thing that gives the grand jury jurisdiction is a criminal affidavit filed by some credible person.
And that's the habeas corpus.
No, this is a straight criminal complaint, just like a ticket.
No, I know, but if they can't show that, I mean, where's the original complaint?
Exactly. This is what I said to Tom. I put the writ in his hand. I filed it 2 years ago in the court. The judge refused to hear it and threw it out. Tom DeLay's attorney, Dick DeGuerin, called me and said, "Did you file a writ of habeas corpus in this case?" Yes, I did.
I know Dick DeGuerin. I've interviewed him.
He said, "Well, I'm the attorney of record, and I didn't authorize you to file that." Well, I didn't need your authorization. I have a right to do it. Besides, you should have done it. What were you doing when they were trouncing all over all his rights? He hung up on me.
Really?
I felt like I stepped in his milk, but this was a special study that I had done because everybody's getting railroaded through the system. I mentioned a police state earlier. Would you recognize a police state if you were in one?
But see, that's the power of a pro se litigant. As you said, once you're lawyers in that bar, they're not supposed to communicate with somebody else's client, but you're a private citizen.
I'm a private citizen. That's my right. And the problem Ron Earl has in creating this prosecution against Tom DeLay illegally is after that, when I filed a writ of habeas corpus for a kid in Montgomery County with the Court of Criminal Appeals, and they denied me permission to file. Well, they didn't have authority to grant or deny permission. It's a writ of right. I filed criminal charges with grand jury. Well, Ron Earl, in his standard chicanery, in an effort to get rid of all of these judges, as they were all Republicans and he's a Democrat and he wasn't running again, he actually gave my complaints against these judges to the grand jury. All of the judges, the 15 judges of the Court of Criminal Appeals, I almost got them about 2 years ago. But he opened the door.
Well, briefly, before we get back into the mortgages, what's the process right now with this individual?
Well, I filed the writ, and the judge told me, I stood up in court and stopped the court, telling them that I have business with this court, and it supersedes any business currently before the court. And Judge Dietz, District Judge Dietz, said, oh, you're the guy with the writ of habeas corpus. I'm not going to waste all these good people's time with that nonsense. You are not to say another word. Get out of my courtroom. I looked around for the bailiff, and I couldn't find him. I had made the mistake earlier of telling him that if this judge refused to hear the writ, I was going to ask the bailiff to arrest the judge. Well, the bailiff chickened out and hit the road. So I left the courtroom, and now I will be filing against Judge Dietz with the grand jury, and we'll see if he's as arrogant when I get him in front of a grand jury as he was in that courtroom.
But specifically, where is Tom DeLay in the process right now?
Now, I put this writ in Tom DeLay's hand. Now he knows that this local prosecuting attorney took him out of office absolutely illegally. I suspect Tom DeLay is really unhappy right now. Now, I'll say this on the air. I have no compassion or love for Tom DeLay. He's a politician. The purpose was his due process rights were being violated like everyone else's. If he realizes how dangerous this corrupt situation is, the problem all these corrupt politicians have is they can't protect themselves from one another. If he goes to the Republican Party and they realize how vulnerable every one of them are, we could well get them to come down and put pressure to stop this practice, in which case they'll open the door for you and I to go down with criminal complaints against public officials, get them in front of grand juries, and that will change everything.
And, of course, grand juries, you have the ballot box, you have the jury box, the grand jury box. If you go back 50 years ago, grand juries were pretty much independent and very powerful and represented the people. Now they've been turned into creatures of the prosecutors, but just because they operate like they own them doesn't mean that that's legal or legitimate. But my question is, where is Tom DeLay in his cases right now?
He hasn't contacted me since I gave him the documentation.
No, but where is his case?
Oh, his case, they're in jury selection right now, and they're trying to prosecute him for a felony. So he didn't take a deal.
And you've looked at the case? He was not guilty of it?
Whether he's guilty or not, I'm not sure. But from reading the case, there's nothing in the case that would indicate it.
And what are they claiming he did?
Oh, they're claiming he took money under the table and then took that money and invested it in different ventures of his own. But from what I could see, it was iffy at best. The fact that Tom DeLay is willing to take this to court, he's pretty sure he's going to win it. But I suspect now, with the problems that the prosecutor's going to have maintaining due process, he's got a much bigger chance of winning it.